Yes. So my name is Ann Mooney. I am the wife of the Diamond Minister Mooney. So I am going to introduce today MelissaBoston, who is our CEO, our visionary, right? She is the pillar of wealth with Dr. Eric Prince that came up with this wellness coach. So I'm going to present to her and none other than any other as my friend, MelissaBoston. She's a wife, she's a mother, she's a visionary, as I said, and she's a go-getter. Oh, she's an A positive too. I know, right? Yes. Get up for Ann Diamond Mooney. Oh my God, guys, we are up to 159 people on Zoom. And Zoom, if I turn the cameras around, this place is literally packed wall to wall. So give it up for yourselves. Now, Dr. Prince has something really deep to share with the meat lovers, right? We talk about the vaccine, and some people didn't take the vaccine. I did take the vaccine, and unfortunately, when I saw my scan, I was a believer in the cholesterol or the things that were happening to our arteries, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But what I will tell you is we got to get our health in order, because we do know also in not taking the vaccine, if you're eating terrible, our community, what happened? We created a cytokine storm. We overreacted to the virus because our immune systems weren't intact because we were eating the wrong foods and not following the regimen we were designed to follow. But for the meat eaters out there, let me tell you something. Do you know they are starting to vaccinate animals now? Which means if you did not get your vaccine, but you are still eating chicken, beef, pork, they're going to get you. Because they're planning on making sure all the animals are vaccinated. That's the indirect way to put it in your system. If for nothing else, I hope that will bring some of you to say, it's time to go vegan. It's time to leave and detach from the animals, right? Well, you know, at the end of the day, get your own garden at least, right? Everything is suspect, right? But the good news is we can grow our garden, and we have people we know. If you need a spot of land to grow some fruits and vegetables, they actually are letting people come grow fruit and vegetables on their land. So I think we have a community here, guys. But I'm excited, guys. The reason we launched the Flat Belly Lifestyle, because we understood that we are dealing with a nation in crisis. If we go back to 1985 and we look at the trends towards obesity, and if you start to compare them to what happened in 2008, and we saw this trend, the trajectory, it was skyrocketing. And then if you take it up even further, they're saying by 2030, advocates predict that more than 50% of residents in 39 states could be obese. The United States government projects 42% obesity rates nationwide. That's a trend we must stop. And that's why we launched the Flat Belly Lifestyle. In fact, in 2013, I wrote a book called Proverbs Diet. In that book, back in 2013, I talked about what the future looks like for our children in 2030 if we don't make a dramatic change in direction. We have just given birth to the first generation of children who are already predicted to have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. That has never happened. With each generation, we should have a better quality of life. And if you look at the consequences of obesity, it's pretty scary, guys, because when you look at cancer rates, whether it's breast cancer, colon cancer, kidney cancer, liver cancer, endometrial, gallbladder cancer, do you know that your rates dramatically increase just because you're classified now as obese? In fact, hypertension dramatically increases. My son is 30 years old, he'll be 31 this year. He had to lose probably about 75 pounds. He still has probably about 80 pounds to lose. But in his 20s, he was battling hypertension. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that the excess body weight. It wasn't so much what he was eating, but it was the extra pound that he was carrying. And I always told my son, you know what? I don't care what size you are. As mothers, we love our children regardless, right? But what scared me when I recognized that it could shorten his life. At that point, I knew it was my responsibility to help empower him to make better decisions so that he could live a higher quality of life. He now has 2 children. He's married. And I said, listen, you're going to have to make a decision. And here's the decision. Either you're going to have to go get a really good life insurance policy or change directions, because at 29 years old, they diagnosed him with a polyp in his colon at 29 years old. Fortunately, it was benign, but we have to recognize that we are a country in crisis. Cholesterol is exponentially increased, artery disease, depression, anxiety, osteoarthritis, sleep apnea, diabetes. Out of these issues right here, my son was battling in his 20s, probably at least 50% of the issues we see right here on this chart. I want you to understand that it's not just about, hey, we get older and we die. We're now seeing our younger people at younger ages face these chronic conditions and die prematurely. I want to explain something, because when I first did the scan, I had 6 areas in the yellow. I took 2 vaccines, right? I'm a type A, and I was eating meat because once I got married, I left my vegan lifestyle, started cooking for my Nigerian husband who loves his meat, and guess what? I fell off track. I was eating lamb chops. Lamb chops are like poison to type A blood, but I was eating them and didn't know it because they were good to me. But here's what I found out, guys. There was a cadaver experience with this sergeant in one of the in the United States Army, and he had, do you know what a cadaver is? Right? It's a body, right? So they were actually reviewing these bodies of people that were deceased, right? Anatomy. So everybody had a chance to review the heart. And as they were looking at the heart, the veins, the arteries operated properly, even though they were deceased. The arteries, do you know that the veins actually still worked kind of like a violin? Because when you have a healthy heart, you guess what? Your arteries and your veins have a certain way they feel. And the veins should kind of be like violin strings, okay? And then when you think about the arteries, they should be like rubber bands. Have you ever pulled back a rubber band and you notice how you can stretch it back? Well, guess what they found out in the cadavers of some of the obese that died of heart attacks at 45 and 46 years old. When they actually attempted to touch their arteries and their veins, they crumbled like pretzels. How in the world is your blood going to get to your brain or your heart if we're walking around with plaque on our arteries that's causing our hearts to harden, our arteries to harden? It's called atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries. And not to mention, I have it in my family because my grandmother at 93 years old, guess what she died from? Hardening of the arteries. And that was a wake-up call for me, because here's the reality, guys. 1 out of 5 people have what they call a heart attack that is silent, which means the damage is already done, but that person doesn't even know they had a heart attack. Isn't that scary? Mm-hmm. That we can be walking around literally a ticking time bomb. And why is it so many of these young men, I see my cousins, right, dying at 46 and 47. When Dr. Prince said at 45 years old, guess what happens? It doubles our chances of dying from heart disease. How many of you in the room are over 45 years old? Just please raise your hand, right? So we've got to start making better decisions. What we got away with at 20, it'll kill us in our 40s and 50s. And here's the reality. We are dying on the standard American diet. And if you look at the acronym for that diet, it spells the word SAD. And if you take the T off a diet, it says die. But here's the reality, guys. 90% of heart disease is preventable. When you said 700,000 people died in 2020 from heart disease, 700,000 people, when you think about 90% of that being preventable, that blows me away. That means there are 630,000 people that died in 2020 that did not have to die. Imagine how many people are going to die this year that do not have to die, but it's about getting them in front of the information. My story, guys, I shared with you when I took my scan. It was my wake-up call, 6 areas in the yellow. My coronary arteries, which are the arteries directly on my heart. There was times I was at the gym, I would get that pain. And I'm thinking, I'm too young to have a heart attack. And I just kept on running. The pain just kept pounding, right? But guess what? I didn't know what I didn't know. It wasn't until taking the scan, understanding, hey, you had the 2 vaccines, your type A blood, you are a ticking time bomb if you don't make a change in your life. So thankful that we met Dr. Prince. I was able to go on the 21-day cleanse. Now I'm what I call veganish. I may sometimes eat something that might have an egg in it, right? Because I'm out and about. But for the most part, in my home, I bring no animals to my home, okay? No animals to my home. And my Nigerian husband is happy because he's eating my vegan burgers and all the other things, and he's loving it. He's loving it, right? So now let's talk blood types, guys, because here's what we want to do. How many of you have not had your scan yet? Who's not had a scan yet? Raise your hand. Okay, so everybody that hasn't had a scan yet, Willie Mooney, there's some people that are been here for a while. So how many do you have room for right now?
Everybody's that we're not doing anything.
Oh, gotcha. What about that room?
Okay.
So we'll take you to the overflow room so we can start the process of getting your scan. Who wants to get a blood type?
Okay, Melissa.
Do we have any blood type?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So get that. So they're going to come and kind of tap you guys periodically, get you guys back there. Because here's the thing, guys, your blood type is more reliable measure of your identity than race, culture, geography. It is a blueprint for who you are and a guide to how you can live your life the most healthy. Is that powerful? Yeah. Guess who I learned that from? Dr. Prince. You know, here I am, a blood type A, raised by a blood type O mom, and I'm eating her diet. Yeah. My mom is in her 70s. She had smoked most of her life, drank most of her life, big bottles of Pepsi to this day. Very little health challenges, right? Now she's starting to feel the consequences, though, because she's having pain and she's not able to walk. But the bottom line, if I would have continued on the diet that she introduced to me, I would not be standing in front of you. As the type A blood, I cannot give my mother blood. But we're related by genetics, right? Right. But guess what? Who's a type A in the room? Sister, we share the same blood antigens, which means I'm not related to you, but that's why this is even a stronger identity, because guess what? If I needed blood or you needed blood, we can give each other blood, but some of our family members who are related to us by DNA cannot give us blood. Is that powerful? They don't let you know how important it is. They don't tell you. They don't tell you. It's criminal, and guess what? We're on a movement. We want to help 1 million+ people over the next 18 months learn their blood type, because it is criminal. And here's the reality, guys. There's 4 different types of blood. I think you guys raised your hand earlier, but we have A, B, and O. Guess what O stands for? Old. Old. That's the original blood. Old. It's the oldest blood. Okay? That's the hunters and gatherers, right? The hungry immune system, okay? Like, I'll read this from you. This is from Dr. Prince. O is for old. It is the oldest. Migrated from Africa in search of game to Europe and Asia. They were hunters and gatherers, the survivor at the top of the food chain with a strong and honorary immune system, willing to and capable of destroying friend or foe. I call them the Onryos. It's not referring, but they don't play. Okay, the most O's are the ones with the road rage, right? They be behind the car, mad, in traffic, ready to get. Like, my husband's old, and I'm like, you know what? He's got serious road rage sometimes. And let me tell you something. Most O's I talk to, they can all relate to that, right? They can all relate to that. And say, hey, we're very cooperative, right? We just let the traffic go, right? We all get along, right? We want peace. We don't want drama. We don't want to get shot. So A is for agrarian society. Cultivation of grain and livestock, more stable communities. They are naturally creative. Sometimes we don't sleep. No, we are. See what I'm saying? Okay. As first immigrants, forced by the necessity of migration to adopt a more agrarian diet and a lifestyle with a more cooperative personality to get along in crowded environments. And so my type A, every single one of us have so much in common. It's so crazy. It's just ridiculous when you realize how you can have more in common with blood types people than your own family. Right? You just finding that out today. Well, that's great though. This is why this is so powerful, guys. Guess what B stands for? B stands for balance, guys. They emerged as humans migrated north in colder, harsher territories, Pakistan and India, the assimilator, adapting to new climates and the mingling of populations, representing nature's quest for a more balanced force between the tension of the mind and demands of the human system. Now, bees, no chicken, no seafood. There's a lot of things on your list that you should avoid. 9% of the population are bees. AB stands for modern. They're rare. Is anyone in here an AB? Oh my goodness. You are rare and special, right? From intermingling type A Caucasians with type B Mongolians, found in less than 5% of the population, and is the newest of blood type. Perfect metaphor for modern life, complex and unsettled. The delicate offspring of a rare merger between the tolerant type A and the formerly barbaric but more balanced type B. Power in the blood. We have a sophisticated immune system that identifies whether substance in the body is friend or foe. One method involves a group of chemical markers called antigens, which are found on the cells of our body. One of the most powerful antigens in the human body is the one that determines blood type. Your blood type is the key to your body's entire immune system. It controls the influence of viruses, bacteria, infections, chemicals, stress, and the entire assortment of invaders and conditions that might compromise your immune system. A common characteristic with type A blood is we typically have a much weaker gut system. So we suffer sometimes from gut health. At age 19, I almost died, emergency surgery, 50% chance, but they didn't tell me, but because of my blood type, my body wasn't digesting the heavy animal consumption. And so guess what was happening? It was not able to digest it, and so it ended up causing what? I had E. coli inside of my body. When the doctors opened me up after they did what they called exploratory surgery, because at the time they couldn't identify what they thought was wrong, they said I had E. coli in all of areas of my body. It was just ridiculous. He didn't know how I even survived that. But we know that we have a good God we serve, and he wasn't done with me, right? There was more for my story. But the bottom line, guys, there are foods that trigger some of these problems. And we have a blood type station in the back where you can go look at the foods that are medicine to the body, foods that you should avoid. In fact, type O's, raise your hand, because these are 3 foods that you might not have known that you should be avoiding. We've been told avocados are great for us, right? But guess what? Our type O ancestors did not eat the avocado. And so guess what? We never developed a way to process it. So when our body eats it, and if you're type O, it's going to look at it as an enemy. And so it's going to go to attack. What about catfish? See, type O's think they can eat all the meat because they're the meat eaters. But guess what? Type O's, you should not be eating catfish. And type O's probably love some catfish, right? Okay. White wine. No white wine for our type O's. So if you like Moscato, that's poison for your type O blood. So switch to red wine, okay? Here's some avoid foods for type A's. Bananas. Thought I could eat bananas. I love bananas, right? But guess what? Type A's who migrated to do the grains did not get exposed to the bananas. So now when we take in the banana, it sees it as an enemy. Seafood, crab, lobster, lamb chops. Guess what? Those are all on our avoid list, type A's. I love it. Type B's, no fried chicken, black beans, avocados. Those are on your avoid list. And if you go to the back, you're going to see a whole list of things you should avoid. Type AB, you're really interesting because you have the avocado and the banana. I don't know how you live without an avocado and a banana. At least we got avocado, right? And the chicken, okay? Well, he don't care about that because he's a vegan, right? Right. So here's the reality, guys. When you use the individualized characteristics of your blood type as a guidepost for eating and living, you're going to be healthier. You're going to naturally reach your ideal weight. You're going to slow down the process of aging. Who's ready to live your best